The National Academy of Medicine, a reputed organization in the USA, published a report whose title was To Err is Human. That report, which was published over 2 decades ago, showed a serious issue of errors in American hospitals. Their data covered various aspects of medicine, but what was most shocking was the data about surgery. It showed that in the American hospitals, each year over 20,000 patients die after surgical procedures. Yes, every year 20,000 people die after operations, that too planned operations, elective surgeries. What would happen if we extrapolated or compared these elective surgery mortality figures to air travel? It would be like two large passenger aircrafts crashing every week, resulting all passengers' deaths. Just imagine, if flying carries such risks, how comfortable would you feel about flying with your family? After the report was published, a leading American newspaper wrote that if an airline had such a safety record, it would have been gone out of business overnight. Although the original report was published over 2 decades ago, and some improvements have been made, changes are slow and the problem persists. Articles are still written referring that original report. Since I compared post-operative deaths with an air crash, let me tell you about 2 aviation incidents to illustrate how things have changed and how they relate to surgery. The first incident is the Tenerife disaster, the deadliest accident in aviation history. In March 1977, on the runway of Tenerife Airport, 2 Boeing 747 collided. Both planes were prepared for departure. One of the planes was KLM aircraft and the other was Pan Am. The Pan Am aircraft was instructed to taxi onto the runway. The KLM was given clearance by the air traffic control for the route, but not for takeoff. The KLM captain mistook this message for clearance to take off. He accelerated the plane down the runway, and due to the fog, the KLM pilot did not see the Pan Am aircraft taxiing ahead. As a result, the collision occurred, killing 583 passengers. Let's see how things have changed in aviation since that accident. In 2009, a US Airways flight departed from New York with 155 people on board. Both engines shut down. Once the captain realized that both engines have failed, he made an instinctive decision to perform a crash landing on the Hudson River. You may have seen this movie. In that incident, all passengers survived. Captain Sellenberger was hailed as a hero. But as later details about how the co-pilot shared flight responsibilities and cabin crew who managed the swift evacuation became known, people began to wonder exactly who the hero was. As the captain himself acknowledged, the outcome was the result of teamwork and proper implementation of procedures as much as the instinctive decision he made. Suppose you are wondering how these 2 opposite outcomes from Tenerife to the Hudson River can be explained. The only explanation is improvement in human factors. The aviation industry takes accidents very seriously and has a robust process of accident analysis. In 1970s, they were focused on technical aspects and tried technological solutions. But it did not reduce the accidents. They kept searching for reasons and tried various other approaches. After years of hard work, they realized that although many of the accidents appeared to be due to technical reasons, in reality, they were not caused by technical problems, but by human factors, such as communication issues and team coordination and pilots' decision making. After this realization, aviation authorities brought about significant changes which are credited for improved air travel safety. The department that deals with improving these factors has become a science called ergonomics or human factor science. What do ergonomists do? In simple words, they improve the efficiency of people within the workplace. Before I explain how all this relates to surgery, I need to tell you about three branches of this human factor science and their surgical counterparts. The first division is physical ergonomics, which involves human interaction with the machines. So that's why it is physical. So human with machine. In aviation, it concerns with how pilot operates in cockpit, how they handle various equipments. The second branch is organizational ergonomics, which involves human-to-human interaction, human resources management. And the third specialty, which is of our interest, is cognitive ergonomics. It addresses all the mental process, the thinking, the judgment, decision-making, and the mental processes involved in daily work. It also considers the individual behavior, emotion, and psychological factors. The question is, can this airline safety model work in surgery? So for that, let's see what are the parallels between aviation and surgery. So for that, this basic model of human factors in aviation, how does it match with the surgery? So in aviation ergonomics, the first division is physical ergonomics, which is to do with the instruments and pilots. It applies in a similar manner in surgery. So in surgery, it deals with designing surgical equipments that are user-friendly and effective. For example, it involves designing equipment such as endoscopes, operating microscopes, and robotic system. The second division is organizational ergonomics. In surgery, it is to do with the teamwork. And the third division is cognitive ergonomics, which is again our main focus. It addresses judgment, decision-making, and all other mental processes involved in daily work. It also deals with the behavioral and emotional aspects of our work. Surgery and aviation share important similarities, that is, similarities between pilots and surgeons. Both are highly trained professionals operating in complex environment where teams interact with technology. In both fields, risk can be very high, with threats arising from various sources. Safety remains a paramount goal for both professionals. And studies have shown that pilots and surgeons have common personality traits. The medical setting where parallels with aviation are most thoroughly explored are the operating rooms. Additionally, the working conditions in the cockpit and the operating room are believed to be similar. If you haven't heard about this human factor science before, you may wonder if it has any clinical applications. Therefore, I'm going to mention a few studies to show the substantial impact on human factors in clinical practice. In one study, the researchers studied over 1 million critical events in the operating theaters. And they found that human factors were responsible for 54% of cardiac arrests, 74% of other critical events, and 71% of deaths among those patients. When adverse events in operating theaters were analyzed, it was discovered that many incidents occurred not because of lack of expertise or technical knowledge, but due to failure of non-technical, in other words, human factors. One shouldn't comfort oneself by thinking that problems occur solely because of inexperience or unusual cases. When Thomas Yu reviewed 133 surgical malpractice claims, it showed that the majority of errors, that is 73%, involved experienced surgeons. And in 84% of those cases, the procedure was routine. Among all adverse events in any hospital, around 40 to 50% occur in operating theaters, while 27% claims against a hospital are due to cognitive errors in the theaters. A factor as simple as communication was a causal factor in 43% of errors made during surgery. If listening to this, you are still thinking that, oh, it's all academic, I can tell you it is not. it has got implications on the ground. In the following videos, we are going to see how all these factors applies to day-to-day surgical practice and how they can make or break surgeon's career. Thanks for watching.